she cried. "I was just bait." And when the cowboy cut the rope, his blood ran cold. The sun was beginning to dip behind the distant hills, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. Ethan Cole, a rugged cowboy with years of experience riding the open plains, guided his horse slowly along the dusty trail leading into a small frontier town. He had been traveling for hours, the wind carrying the faint smell of sagebrush and dry earth. The town ahead looked quiet, almost too quiet, with wooden buildings casting long shadows across the streets. Ethan wasn't one to be easily surprised. He had faced wild storms, tricky cattle drives, and even outlaws in his time. But something about the calmness of this town gave him pause. There was an eerie stillness, like the kind that happens just before a storm. He pulled his horse to a slow trot, eyes scanning the town square. The general store's door swung gently in the breeze, and a few lanterns flickered to life as night began to fall. As he rode closer, Ethan noticed movement near the old saloon at the edge of the town. A woman was standing there, hunched over, as if trying to catch her breath. Her clothes were simple and dusty, but her posture told a story of desperation. Ethan tightened his grip on the reins and guided his horse toward her. "Are you all right, ma'am?" he called out in his deep, calm voice. The woman looked up, and for a moment Ethan thought she might run away. But then she stumbled toward him, her eyes wide with fear. "Please, you have to help me," she said, her voice trembling. "They're after me." "I don't know what to do." Ethan studied her carefully. She appeared young, maybe in her early 20s, with dark hair tangled around her face. Her eyes, wide and glistening with tears, seemed to tell him more than her words. He had seen fear before. He had seen people run from danger. But this was different. There was a kind of panic in her that was almost raw, almost desperate enough to make him pause. "Who's after you?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. He wanted her to feel that he was someone she could trust, someone calm in the midst of chaos. They'll catch me if I stay here," she said quickly, glancing over her shoulder toward the shadows of the buildings. "I don't know why they want me, but I can't let them." Ethan's mind worked quickly. He knew that in small towns like this rumors could travel fast, and trouble often came without warning. But he also knew that a young woman in danger might not be exaggerating. "All right," he said after a moment, his voice firm but gentle. "You can come with me. I have a place outside of town where you'll be safe for the night, but you'll have to trust me." She hesitated for a moment, biting her lip, then nodded quickly. "I'll go anywhere. Just please, don't let them find me." Ethan helped her onto the back of his horse, making sure she was secure before mounting himself. As they rode out of the town, the streets empty except for the soft creak of wooden signs swaying in the wind, Ethan kept his eyes on the horizon. He had been alone on the trail for days, and while he was used to solitude, the presence of this frightened stranger made him alert in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. "Why do they want you?" he asked quietly, careful not to sound pushy. I don't know," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was just walking through town and they started following me. I thought maybe if I ran I could lose them, but..." Her voice trailed off and she shivered. Ethan nodded slowly. It wasn't unusual for people in towns like this to get caught up in troubles they didn't fully understand. He had heard stories of people being pursued for debts, misunderstandings, or even simple mistakes. Whatever the reason, it seemed serious enough for her to be genuinely scared. The ride was quiet for a while, broken only by the rhythmic sound of the horse's hooves on the dirt trail. The woman, whose name Ethan learned was Lila May, kept her eyes fixed on the ground, clutching his saddle tightly. There was a tension in her body that made Ethan uneasy. It wasn't just fear. It was exhaustion, as if she had been running for days. "You'll be safe soon," Ethan said after a few minutes. "Just a little farther, and we'll reach my cabin." Lila glanced up at him, and for the first time he saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I would have done if I stayed in town." Ethan gave her a small nod, saying nothing. Words wouldn't help much. Actions would. By the time they reached his cabin, the sun had fully disappeared behind the hills, and the sky was a deep blue sprinkled with stars. The cabin was small but sturdy, surrounded by a fence and a few sparse trees. Smoke curled from the chimney, a sign that someone had prepared a warm fire for the night. Ethan helped Lila down from the horse and led her inside. "Sit by the fire," he said, pointing to a chair near the hearth. "I'll get us some water and food. You need to rest." Lila sank into the chair, her shoulders slumping with relief. She looked around the cabin, taking in the simple furniture, the wooden walls, and the smell of burning wood. It was a safe place, a small haven in a world that had suddenly become frightening and uncertain. Ethan moved quietly to the kitchen area, filling 2 tin cups with water and setting them on a small table. He handed one to Lila, who accepted it with a grateful smile. "Do you have family?" he asked gently, keeping his voice calm. "Anyone you can call or who can help you?" Lila shook her head. "No. I left home a long time ago. I've been on my own for a while. But this is different. I don't think anyone can help me now." Ethan nodded again. He understood that feeling. Out here, on the edge of the frontier, people often had to rely on themselves. But that didn't mean they had to face every danger alone. "Try to rest," he said. "You're safe here tonight. We'll figure out what to do in the morning." Lila nodded, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. She leaned back in the chair, staring into the fire as the flames danced and flickered. Ethan watched her for a moment, then moved to sit in his own chair nearby. He knew that sleep wouldn't come easily tonight, not with the unknown danger lingering somewhere beyond the cabin walls. But at least for now, Lila was safe. As the night deepened, Ethan thought about the strange twists that life sometimes threw at him. He had ridden through storms, faced danger on the open plains, and even had run-ins with people who had darker intentions. But something about Lila's presence, her fear, and the mystery surrounding her made him feel unusually alert. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, that the night held secrets yet to be revealed. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the distant sounds of animals stirring and the faint rustle of leaves. Inside, the cabin was warm and quiet, lit only by the dancing fire. Ethan kept his hand close to the hilt of his knife, not because he expected trouble immediately, but because instinct told him to be prepared. Lila finally closed her eyes, letting herself rest for the first time in what felt like days. Ethan, meanwhile, sat quietly, listening to the crackle of the fire, keeping his senses alert. The frontier was never truly safe, and tonight he had a feeling that the calm was only temporary. But he would be ready for whatever came. The night stretched on, stars glittering in the sky above, and the cabin remained a small island of warmth and safety in the darkness. For now, Ethan and Lila had found a moment of peace, a brief respite from the worries and dangers of the world outside. But both of them knew, in their hearts, that the real story was only beginning, and the coming days would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. The next morning, the sun peeked over the distant hills, casting golden light across the plains. Ethan Cole stirred awake before the first sounds of birds could reach the cabin, his mind already alert. Out here, in the quiet of the frontier, he had learned long ago that trouble rarely gave a warning. He rose carefully from his bedroll, stretched his arms and listened to the soft whispers of the wind through the trees. Lila May was still asleep, her head resting on her folded arms by the small fire. She had managed to relax, finally allowing herself a moment of rest after the long night. Ethan studied her quietly. Something about her frightened eyes and tense posture had unsettled him the night before. He had seen fear before, but hers was different, an almost unnatural tension, as if she were carrying a secret she couldn't share. After a moment, Ethan moved to the small kitchen corner. He lit the stove, letting the fire catch quickly, and set a small pot of water to boil. Soon, he would have tea ready, and perhaps some bread he had in his small supply. Breakfast in the frontier wasn't often a feast, but it was enough to provide strength for the day. The smell of boiling water stirred Lila awake. She rubbed her eyes and looked around, blinking in the sunlight. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice still thick with sleep. "Morning," Ethan replied, offering her a cup of warm tea. "Drink this. You need it." She took the cup with both hands, holding it carefully as if the warmth might calm her nerves. The steam rose, curling around her face, and for a moment the world outside seemed far away.
"Thank you," she whispered.
"I don't know why, but I feel a little safer here." Ethan nodded, taking a sip of his own tea. He didn't answer, because words alone weren't enough to reassure someone like Lila. She needed to see safety in actions, not promises. After breakfast, Ethan suggested a short walk outside, hoping the fresh morning air might calm her further. The cabin was surrounded by sparse trees, and the ground sloped gently toward a small creek that wound its way through the plains. Birds chirped softly, and a light breeze carried the scent of dry grass and earth. As they walked, Ethan asked gently, "Tell me again what happened yesterday. I need to understand so I can help." Lila hesitated, glancing toward the distant horizon. I was just walking through town. I didn't want trouble. But they started following me. I don't know why, but they kept appearing wherever I went. I thought I could lose them if I kept moving, but her voice trembled. They seemed to know everything I did. Ethan studied her carefully. There were gaps in her story, things she wasn't saying. But he didn't press. He had learned that forcing someone to speak often made things worse.
"All right," he said after a pause.
"We'll take it one step at a time. You're safe here for now, but we need to figure out what they want and why." Lila nodded, her eyes clouded with worry. "I just don't understand. I've never caused anyone harm, not intentionally. I don't know why they're after me." Ethan listened quietly. The truth was, out here in the frontier, life was often complicated in ways no one could explain at first. Sometimes people got caught up in misunderstandings, rumors, or events they didn't even know they were involved in. Whatever the reason for Lila's predicament, it was clear she needed protection until the situation became clearer. As they walked along the creek, Ethan noticed small signs that something, or someone, had been nearby. A footprint here, a broken branch there. They weren't dangerous in themselves, but they suggested that someone had passed through recently. He didn't mention it to Lila, not wanting to alarm her, yet he made a mental note to be vigilant. They reached a small wooden bridge crossing the creek, the boards creaking softly under their weight. Lila paused, looking down at the water. "It's beautiful here," she said softly, her voice carrying a hint of wonder. "It's peaceful. I haven't seen anything like this in a long time." Ethan nodded. The plains can be quiet, almost too quiet sometimes, but there's a kind of freedom here you don't find in towns. He glanced at her, studying her expression. "And right now, this is as safe as it gets." Ethan asked questions about her past, about the life she had left behind, and Lila answered hesitantly, offering small pieces of her story. She had grown up on the edge of the frontier, traveling from town to town with her family. Her parents had passed away years ago, leaving her to navigate life on her own. She had learned to survive, to be cautious, and to trust very few people. Ethan listened without judgment. He knew that life on the frontier could be harsh, and that people often carried scars, both visible and invisible. Lila's caution and alertness were signs of intelligence and instinct, not weakness. As the morning wore on, the sun climbed higher in the sky, and Ethan led Lila back to the cabin. He had a plan for the day. "We need to prepare for anything," he said. "You'll stay close to the cabin, and I'll check the surrounding area for signs of anyone nearby. It doesn't mean trouble is coming, but it's better to be ready." Lila nodded, though the thought of being alone made her nervous. Ethan could see it in her eyes. "I'll be careful," he said, giving her a reassuring smile. "I'll be back soon and everything will be fine." He set off on foot, scanning the trees and the open fields. He moved slowly, deliberately, noting every sound, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, the soft scuff of his own boots on the ground. There was nothing overtly threatening, but the small signs, the footprint by the creek, the bent grass near the trail, kept him alert. Someone had been here recently, though he couldn't tell whether it had been days or just hours ago. Meanwhile, Lila stayed near the cabin, trying to busy herself with simple chores, gathering firewood, sweeping the floor, and tending to the small garden outside. She kept glancing toward the trees, her nerves on edge. Despite the safety of the cabin, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching, waiting. Hours passed in this careful rhythm. Ethan observing the surroundings, Lila attempting to focus on simple tasks. The tension was quiet but persistent, a thread that ran through the day. Neither of them spoke much about the unknown threat, but it hung in the air, unspoken and insistent. As the sun began to descend toward the horizon, Ethan returned to the cabin carrying a small bundle of supplies. He had found nothing unusual, no evidence of anyone nearby, but the signs of past presence were enough to keep him cautious. "I didn't see anyone," he said as he entered, setting the bundle on the table. "But we need to stay alert. You never know what might appear, even in the quietest places." Lila nodded, sipping her water. "I thought I was safe here," she murmured. "I didn't expect this kind of worry. Safety is never guaranteed, especially out here, but we do what we can." They spent the evening quietly, preparing a simple meal and checking the surroundings from the cabin's porch. The sky turned shades of orange and purple, and the first stars began to twinkle above. Lila's nerves slowly eased as she watched the sun set, finding a strange comfort in the ordinary patterns of nature. The way the wind moved through the trees, the distant call of a night bird, the soft ripple of the creek. His senses, trained over years of riding the frontier alone, were never fully at rest. He noticed small details, the way shadows shifted among the trees, the subtle movements that could indicate another presence. Nothing happened, yet the awareness stayed with him, a reminder that danger could appear at any time. By nightfall, they returned inside, and Ethan stoked the fire until it burned steadily, casting warmth and light across the cabin. Lila sat near the hearth, her hands wrapped around a cup of warm tea, trying to calm herself. "Tomorrow," Ethan said, his voice calm but firm, "we'll need to make a plan. Whoever or whatever is following you could return. We need to be ready, but for now, just rest." Lila nodded, leaning back in her chair. She felt exhausted but safe for the moment. The frontier was unpredictable, but she had learned something important that day. That trust, even when scarce, could mean the difference between fear and hope. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the sounds of a quiet night. Ethan sat nearby, watching the flames flicker and listening to the soft creaks and groans of the cabin. The day had passed without incident, but the tension lingered like a shadow. Both of them knew that the calm would not last forever. The night stretched on, and the cabin remained a small island of warmth and safety. But as they drifted toward sleep, a sense of anticipation filled the air. The feeling that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, and perhaps answers to questions they didn't yet know how to ask. The next morning dawned crisp and bright, the sunlight spilling over the hills and painting the cabin in soft gold. Ethan Cole had risen early, as always, his eyes scanning the horizon even before the first sounds of birds stirred. He had slept lightly, aware that the quiet of the plains could hide anything, and the feeling from the day before, the unease in the air, had not left him. Lila May was already awake, sitting quietly on the porch, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea. Her gaze was fixed on the distance, where the plains stretched endlessly, dotted with the occasional tree and the faint outlines of distant hills. She seemed calmer than yesterday, yet her nervous energy still lingered, a tension that Ethan could feel, even from a few feet away. "Morning," Ethan said, approaching her with a small smile. "Sleep well?" Lila nodded, though her eyes betrayed a restlessness. "I did. For a little while," she admitted. "But I kept waking up. I kept thinking someone might be out there." Ethan didn't respond immediately. He understood the feeling all too well. Even in the calmest moments, the mind of someone who had been pursued or threatened refused to rest easily.
"That's natural," he said finally.
"You've been through a lot. It takes time to feel safe again." She looked at him, her expression a mixture of relief and lingering fear. "Thank you for helping me," she said softly. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been here. Ethan nodded, though he didn't allow himself to relax. Gratitude didn't mean safety. Not yet. There were questions he still needed answered, and he had to watch the signs carefully. After a light breakfast of bread and tea, Ethan suggested a walk to check the surroundings. "We should be cautious today," he said. "If anyone is following you, they could try again."
"Let's make sure we see everything around here." Lila agreed, though the tension in her movements was clear.
As they walked along the edge of the cabin property, Ethan noted small details. A broken branch, a slight indentation in the soft soil, the faint traces of footprints that weren't there yesterday. Nothing conclusive, but enough to make him remain vigilant. "Do you remember seeing anyone yesterday?" he asked, keeping his tone gentle. "Anything at all that seemed strange?" Lila thought for a moment, frowning. "No, not really," she said. "I kept looking over my shoulder, but I didn't see anyone." "It's like someone knew I was moving, but I couldn't see them." Ethan nodded slowly. That aligned with his own observations. Whoever, or whatever, had been following her was careful, patient, and likely experienced in hiding. That made the situation more complicated. They walked quietly for a while, the morning stretching in a peaceful rhythm, yet the air was thick with unspoken tension. Ethan's mind kept returning to the signs he had noticed, the footprints, the bent grass, and the subtle sounds in the distance that could have been the wind, or could have been something else. As they reached a narrow path leading into a small wooded area, Lila suddenly stopped. She stared ahead, eyes wide. I think they're here," she whispered, her voice trembling. Ethan froze, scanning the shadows among the trees. At first he saw nothing unusual. The woods were calm, sunlight filtering through the leaves in soft patterns. But then he noticed it, a small, almost invisible rope tied between two trees, low to the ground. A snare of some kind set carefully to catch attention, or perhaps to trap someone. Ethan's heart beat faster, though he kept his face calm. He recognized the craftsmanship. Someone had set this deliberately, knowing it would be noticed. And the way it was placed suggested it wasn't meant to trap animals. It was meant to trap a person. Lila gasped, taking a step back. "Oh, no, that's for me, isn't it?" "I don't know yet," he said, his voice calm but firm. "But we need to be careful. This doesn't feel accidental. Someone is planning something." Lila's hands trembled, and she looked around nervously. "I didn't set this," she said quickly. "I swear, I don't know who would do this."
Ethan studied her, searching for any signs of deceit.
Her fear seemed real, raw and unfiltered. That didn't rule out a hidden plan, but for now, he chose to trust his instincts. "All right," he said. "We'll deal with it together. Step back from the rope. Don't touch anything. Let me handle it." He approached carefully, examining the rope and the way it was tied. It was strong, thick, and secure, positioned to hold weight. Someone had gone to considerable effort to prepare this trap. He looked around, scanning the woods for any further signs. Footprints, disturbed leaves, anything that might indicate who had been here or when. Meanwhile, Lila stayed close, watching him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. She seemed torn between wanting to help and needing to keep a safe distance. Ethan noticed her tension, the way her hands gripped the strap of her bag, the way her eyes darted to every shadow. After a few moments, Ethan stepped back. "This is no ordinary trap," he said, his voice low. "Someone intended to catch a person here. Whoever did this is smart and careful." Lila swallowed hard, tears threatening in her eyes. I was just trying to run away," she said. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." "I just wanted to be safe," Ethan nodded slowly. "I know," he said, "but we need to be smart now. We can't let fear make us careless. The first step is understanding what they want and how they're trying to get it." He took a deep breath and examined the rope again, considering the safest way to deal with it. He would need to remove it carefully so that no sudden movement would trigger any unexpected consequences. Every detail mattered: the tension in the rope, the knots, the direction of the pull. As he worked, he explained what he was doing to Lila, trying to keep her calm. "See this knot?" he said. "It's tied in a way that it can hold weight but can be released if handled carefully. I need you to step back and stay still. Don't move until I tell you it's safe." Lila nodded, gripping the strap of her bag tightly.
"I'm staying right here," she said. "Please be careful." Ethan worked methodically, untangling the rope and loosening the tension.
His hands were steady, guided by years of experience and careful attention. He had learned that even the smallest mistake could make a big difference. Finally, the rope came free, falling harmlessly to the ground. Ethan stepped back and examined the area one last time. "It's safe now," he said. "But this tells us something important. Whoever set this is thinking ahead. They're patient and deliberate. They didn't want to rush, and they didn't want to be seen."
Lila let out a shaky breath, relief washing over her. "Thank you,"
she whispered.
"I don't know what I would have done
"If I had triggered it." Ethan nodded, keeping his expression serious. "We're not out of danger yet," he said. "This is just the beginning. Whoever's following you will likely have more plans. We need to be ready for anything." They walked back toward the cabin slowly, each step measured, eyes scanning the trees and the path. Lila's fear was still present, but she seemed to trust Ethan more now, relying on his experience and judgment. By the time they reached the porch, the sun was high in the sky and the air was warm. Ethan suggested they take a break, rest, and plan their next steps. Lila sank into her chair, her hands still trembling slightly. "I didn't expect this," she said quietly. "I thought if I ran far enough I could hide. I didn't think they would." Her voice trailed off. Ethan shook his head. "Sometimes running isn't enough," he said gently. "You can't always outrun the kind of trouble that thinks ahead. But you can be smart, cautious, and prepared. That's what we'll do." They spent the rest of the afternoon in quiet preparation, checking the cabin, reinforcing weak spots, and ensuring they had everything they might need. Ethan taught Lila a few simple safety measures, things like how to watch for signs in the environment and how to remain alert without panicking. As the sun began to dip again, casting long shadows across the plains, Lila looked out over the horizon. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked softly. Ethan didn't answer immediately. He knew that worry alone wouldn't solve anything, but honesty was important. "Maybe," he said finally. "But we'll be ready if they do. And whatever happens, you won't be facing it alone." For the first time in days, Lila allowed herself to feel a small measure of hope. The trap had been revealed and neutralized, and though the threat was real, she wasn't helpless. Night fell quietly, stars sparkling overhead. The cabin remained a small island of safety, though both of them knew the calm would not last forever. Tomorrow might bring new challenges, new discoveries, or even unexpected surprises, but for now, they had survived the day, faced the first real sign of danger, and learned that careful thinking and trust could make the difference between fear and security. The following morning arrived quietly, with the soft haze settling over the plains. Ethan Cole had been awake long before the sun touched the horizon. He had slept lightly as usual, listening to every sound and feeling every subtle movement in the air. His instincts told him the previous day's trap was not the end. Someone was planning ahead, and he intended to be ready. Lila May stirred in the small bedroll near the fire, her eyes half open. She had slept a little better than the night before, though the tension in her shoulders and the nervous twitch of her hands betrayed her lingering anxiety. Ethan watched her for a moment, studying her expression. She was still frightened, but there was a glimmer of determination in her eyes, a silent promise that she would survive whatever came. He poured 2 cups of tea and handed one to her. "Drink this," he said gently. "It will help you start the day." Lila accepted it, holding the warm cup tightly. She took a slow sip, and for a moment the tension in her shoulders eased. "Thank you," she murmured. I feel a little braver when you're here." "Good," he said, "because today we may need all the bravery we can find." After a quick breakfast, he suggested they move carefully to check the nearby trail, hoping to find more signs of whoever had set the trap the day before. Lila followed, walking close to him, her eyes scanning the area as if she could detect danger before it appeared. They moved through the light morning mist, the soft crunch of their footsteps on dry grass the only sound. Ethan pointed out subtle details along the trail: broken branches, a faint indentation in the soil, a leaf disturbed unnaturally. He explained how these signs could indicate that someone had passed through recently, or even that they had been watching the cabin.
I don't understand, Lila said quietly.
Why would anyone go to so much trouble just to follow me? Ethan looked at her calmly. Sometimes people don't need a reason that makes sense to us. The important thing is to notice what's happening and to prepare. That way, we stay one step ahead. As they approached a clearing, the air seemed to change. The wind carried a faint sound, soft and deliberate. Ethan paused, listening carefully. It was too organized to be the wind or animals moving through the trees. Someone, or something, was nearby. "Stay close to me," he whispered, "and don't make a sound." Lila nodded, fear flickering in her eyes, but she trusted him. They moved slowly, stepping over roots and fallen branches, until they reached the center of the clearing. It was then that Lila froze. "Oh no," she whispered, pointing to the center. Ethan's gaze followed her finger, and his heart sank. A rope snare was stretched across the clearing, tied carefully between two sturdy trees. It was similar to the one from the previous day, but this one had been prepared with greater care, positioned to hold weight at shoulder height. "They're testing us," Ethan muttered under his breath. "Or worse. They want to see if I'll take the bait." Lila's eyes widened. I don't understand. Is it for me again?" Ethan shook his head slightly, keeping his voice calm.
I don't know for certain, he said, but we need to be careful.
"Whoever set this wants a reaction. They're counting on it."
Lila's hand shook, and she gripped the strap of her bag tightly.
"I can't do this," she said. "I just wanted to run and hide. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Ethan took a deep breath. "I know," he said gently, "but hiding won't help. We need to face this carefully. Step back and watch me. Don't touch the rope or the trees." "Not yet." He moved forward slowly, examining the rope, the knots, and the tension. His eyes narrowed as he studied it carefully. Whoever had set this trap had not only been deliberate, they had expected someone to approach. Every detail mattered: the way the rope was tied, the angle, the possible triggers. Lila stood back, silent but tense. She wanted to help, wanted to protect herself, but she knew Ethan's experience was the key to handling the situation safely. She could feel the importance of the moment, the weight of the unseen eyes that might be watching them both. After a careful inspection, Ethan realized that the rope had been set to hold weight temporarily, then release if disturbed. Whoever designed it had planned for it to be visible, enough to draw attention, but not enough to allow anyone to tamper with it safely without knowledge.
This isn't just a trap, Ethan said quietly.
"It's a test. They want to see if we're careful, or if we panic, and I think they've left something hidden in the clearing. We need to be ready for anything." "Hidden."
What do you mean? Ethan gestured for her to stay back. "Just watch."
"Don't move until I tell you it's safe." Slowly he approached the rope, tracing the knots with his fingers, noting the direction of the pull and the tension. He tested it carefully, ensuring nothing would snap or move unexpectedly. Step by step, he loosened the rope, lowering it safely to the ground. Lila let out a small breath of relief, but Ethan didn't relax. Then he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Beneath the rope, partially hidden by leaves and shadows, was a figure. At first he thought it might be Lila herself, caught or threatened. But it wasn't. It was a carefully arranged scare. A dummy, dressed in clothing meant to mimic a human figure, complete with boots and a hat. Ethan's heart pounded, not because of fear, but because he realized the cleverness of the trap. Whoever had set this up had intended for him, or anyone who came, to react in shock, hesitate, or make a mistake. It was psychological, meant to test courage and decision-making under pressure. Lila gasped beside him.
It's
not real," she whispered, relief washing over her. Ethan shook his head slowly. "No, but that doesn't mean we're safe. Whoever set this trap is thinking ahead. They wanted us to find this and panic. They're smart, patient, and deliberate." The realization hit both of them. The danger was real, but it wasn't just about physical traps. The mind games, the fear, the anticipation, those were tools designed to make mistakes more likely, and they had only just begun. Ethan carefully removed the dummy, examining it for clues. It was simple but effective, placed to appear terrifying at first glance. Whoever made it had knowledge of human behavior, understanding instinctive reactions. Ethan's respect for their planning grew, but so did his caution. "We need to move," he said finally. "We can't linger here. Whoever set this trap will be back, or watching. We need to regroup, plan, and stay alert." Lila nodded, still shaken but resolute. I trust you," she said. "I don't know what's coming next, but I'll stay close." Together they made their way back to the cabin, moving carefully and keeping their senses alert. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of birds, the soft whisper of wind, felt amplified. The experience had sharpened their awareness, teaching them that danger wasn't always obvious. Back at the cabin, they reinforced the doors and windows, checking for anything out of place. Ethan explained to Lila the importance of careful observation, noting small details that could indicate a person's presence without revealing themselves. Lila listened intently, absorbing the lessons, her earlier fear gradually transforming into cautious determination. As the afternoon wore on, the tension eased slightly, though both knew it would not disappear entirely. The trap had been revealed, the first real test survived, but the psychological games were only beginning. Whoever was following Lila was methodical, patient, and clever. And Ethan understood that staying calm, thinking ahead, and maintaining trust would be their greatest tools. The sun began to set, casting long shadows over the cabin and the surrounding plains. Lila stepped onto the porch, looking out at the horizon.
Do you think they'll come back?
She asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan joined her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Maybe," he said honestly, "but we'll be ready. Whatever they're planning, we won't be caught off guard. We've learned how they think, and that gives us an advantage." For the first time since the traps had begun, Lila allowed herself to feel a small measure of hope. The dummy had been frightening, yes, but it had also taught her something vital. That fear could be managed, that careful thought could overcome instinctive panic, and that together she and Ethan were capable of facing the unknown. Night fell quietly over the plains. The cabin remained a small island of safety, a place where lessons were learned and plans could be made. Both Ethan and Lila knew that tomorrow might bring new surprises, new tests, and perhaps even the answers they were seeking. But for now, they had faced the first real challenge, survived it, and strengthened the trust between them. The wind whispered softly through the trees, carrying the quiet reminder that the frontier was full of mysteries, and that the mind games as well as the dangers had only just begun. The following morning, the plains were quiet, bathed in soft golden light as the sun rose over the distant hills. Ethan Cole had already been awake for some time, his mind alert and cautious. The events of the past days, the trap, the dummy, the signs of someone watching, had not left him. He understood now that the unknown pursuer was clever, patient, and deliberate. Every step forward needed careful thought, every decision measured. Lila May stirred beside the fire, wrapping her hands around a warm cup of tea. Her eyes were alert, but a new determination shone in them. Over the past few days, she had learned how to watch for signs, how to move carefully, and how to trust her instincts. She had learned from Ethan, observing his patience, his focus, and his quiet confidence. For the first time, she felt that she was not helpless, that she could face whatever challenge lay ahead. Ethan joined her with his own cup of tea, taking a slow sip as he scanned the horizon. "Today," he said quietly, "we need to figure out what's really going on. Whoever set those traps is not trying to scare us for nothing. They want something, and we need to find out what." Lila nodded, swallowing nervously but trying to stay composed. "Do you think they'll be here soon?" she asked.
Ethan shook his head. "I don't know."
"But they will come if they believe there's a reason. We need to be prepared, and we need to act carefully. No sudden moves, no assumptions." After a quick breakfast, they packed supplies and moved cautiously along the trails surrounding the cabin. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the soft call of a bird, even the whisper of the wind, was noted. Ethan had taught Lila how to read the subtle signs of the environment, how to detect if someone had passed by, and how to remain calm even when the heart raced. As they approached a clearing they had avoided the day before, Lila's eyes widened. "Do you see that?" she whispered. Ethan followed her gaze and noticed a small stack of supplies carefully arranged near the edge of the clearing. There were blankets, a few containers, and a note pinned to a tree. He approached cautiously, motioning for Lila to stay behind. The note was simple, written in clear handwriting. "You have been careful. Your patience is noticed. There is nothing to fear if you continue to act wisely." Ethan read it aloud to Lila, keeping his voice steady. "It's a message," he said. "Someone is watching, but they're not here to harm you, at least not yet. They want to test our reactions and our judgment." Lila exhaled slowly, relief and curiosity mixing in her chest. "Why would someone do that?" she asked. "Control," Ethan said simply. "Someone who wants to see what you'll do, how you'll respond, and whether you can think calmly under pressure. They're observing, not attacking. For now, that works in our favor. We can learn from them, and we can anticipate their next move." Together they examined the supplies. Ethan noted their careful placement. Everything was deliberately arranged to be found, but nothing was out of place or unsafe. Whoever had left them was skilled and patient, but also cautious enough not to endanger anyone directly. "We need to use this," Ethan said finally. "We can gather information from the patterns they've left. We can anticipate their next steps." "Aye," we cried. "We could have done anything bigger than next to me be set by him." Traps, the dummy hidden ropes, was actually teaching her something important. She had learned to notice details, to remain calm, and to think ahead. As the day progressed they moved along the trails, carefully observing signs of activity. Ethan taught Lila to recognize small disturbances. Broken twigs, subtle footprints, displaced leaves that indicated someone had passed nearby. Lila became increasingly skilled, pointing out details Ethan might have missed. Together they pieced together a path, a pattern that suggested their observer was moving in a predictable way. By afternoon they reached a larger clearing, one that offered a wide view of the surrounding plains. Ethan motioned for Lila to stay close. "This is where we'll set our plan in motion," he said. "We'll use what we've learned to turn the tables. We won't wait to be surprised again." They arranged themselves carefully, hiding behind the natural cover of trees and shrubs. From their vantage point they could see subtle movements in the distance, shadows shifting, a faint outline of someone moving along the path they had tracked. "Do you see them?" Lila whispered. Ethan nodded.
Yes.
"And they're following the pattern we expected. That means we've learned enough to act." Minutes passed, tense and silent. Then Ethan signaled to Lila, explaining exactly what to do. They would wait, observe, and only move when they were certain it was safe. Lila's hands were steady now, her earlier fear replaced with focused determination. She understood the rhythm of observation and patience, and she followed Ethan's instructions perfectly. The observer came into the clearing, a lone figure, moving cautiously, clearly aware of the possibility of being noticed. Ethan and Lila remained still, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment. Then, with a quiet signal from Ethan, they stepped into view, not to confront, not to attack, but to show that they were aware and prepared. The observer froze, startled to be seen. Ethan approached slowly, his posture calm but authoritative. You've been leaving messages and signs, Ethan said evenly. We understand now. Your tests are clever but unnecessary. We've learned what we need to know. There's no reason for further tricks. The figure relaxed slightly, raising hands in a gesture of peace. Lila stepped forward as well, her voice steady. We're not here to fight. We just want to know why all of this is happening. The figure smiled faintly. It was never about harm, they said. It was about learning, testing patience, and teaching awareness. You both shown remarkable calm under pressure. That was the purpose of the traps and the messages. You have earned the understanding we hoped you would gain. Ethan and Lila exchanged glances. Relief, astonishment, and a strange sense of accomplishment washed over them. The traps, the dummy, and the carefully placed signs had been a lesson, not a threat. The tension of the past days had prepared them, sharpened their awareness, and strengthened their confidence. Then it's over? Lila asked, incredulous. For now, the figure said. You are ready for what the frontier may bring. You've learned to trust your instincts, to observe carefully, and to act thoughtfully. That is more valuable than any safety we could offer. Thank you, he said. We've learned a lot, and we'll carry it forward. This has changed how we see everything. The figure gave a slight bow and began to move back toward the path, leaving Ethan and Lila alone in the clearing. The wind carried away the faint rustle of footsteps, leaving only the open plains, the soft sound of the creek, and the warmth of the afternoon sun. Lila let out a long breath, feeling the tension release from her shoulders. I can't believe it, she said softly. It was all a test? Ethan smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and satisfaction in his eyes. And you passed. We both did. But the lesson is important, even when danger seems overwhelming. Careful observation and calm action can make all the difference. They returned to the cabin slowly, taking time to notice details they had overlooked before. The gentle sway of branches, the ripple of sunlight on the creek, the faint tracks of small animals. Everything seemed more vivid now, alive with meaning. The past days had taught them to see the world differently, to notice the small things that could indicate much more. Back at the cabin, they sat on the porch as the sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky with soft shades of orange and pink. For the first time in days, they felt truly at peace. The sense of threat that had haunted them was gone, replaced by confidence, understanding, and a strengthened bond between them. I feel different, Lila said quietly, watching the horizon. Stronger, more aware. I never imagined I could stay calm through all of that. It's the lesson you've earned. The frontier teaches in many ways, not just with danger, but with challenges that sharpen the mind and spirit. You've learned well. The evening passed quietly, stars beginning to twinkle above, reflecting in the gentle surface of the creek. The cabin was warm, safe, and filled with a sense of accomplishment. They had faced tests, learned lessons, and survived not by luck, but through careful thinking, observation, and trust in each other. As night deepened, Lila and Ethan sat together in silence, watching the firelight flicker. There were no more traps, no more hidden observers, just the calm of the frontier and the knowledge that they had grown stronger. The lessons of the past days would stay with them forever. Patience, observation, trust, and courage in the face of the unknown. The frontier was wide, unpredictable, and full of mysteries. But now they felt ready. Whatever challenges came next, they would face them together, with wisdom, calm, and the knowledge that even the most clever of tricks could be overcome by careful thought and steady hearts. And in that quiet night, under the endless sky, Ethan and Lila finally allowed themselves to relax, knowing that they had survived, learned, and grown from the test that had once seemed so frightening. The sun would rise again tomorrow, and with it, a new day full of possibilities, adventure, and lessons yet to come.